Deep below the surface, in the darkest corners of the Earth, there are places where few dare to go. In today's video, we follow the stories of those who ventured into the unknown. First, explorers descend over 7,000 feet into a seemingly endless cave. But as they go deeper, a storm brews above. Weeks later, the floodwaters begin to rise, slowly at first, then mercilessly. Trapped in the darkness, neck deep in freezing water, the clock begins to run out. But that's just the beginning. Are you ready to descend into the depths and uncover the truth? Hold on tight, because these journeys will keep you on the edge of your seat. Jim Houtz's life began on a frosty Colorado day, but his family soon moved to California. As a youngster, he split his time between home and two beloved spots, the San Bernardino Mountains and Catalina Island, where his mom ran a Girl Scout camp each summer. Nature became Jim's playground, sparking a deep love for wild places, especially the vast oceans. Even as a child, he yearned to explore those mysterious waters. Determined to chase his dream, Jim enlisted in the US Navy. The journey was tough, with grueling training that pushed many to their limits. Only a few, including Jim, made it through. He joined an elite underwater team focused on recovery and demolition, a role that later evolved into the modern Navy SEALs. Jim's diving missions took him to treacherous waters worldwide. He became the go-to expert for retrieving crucial items, like test missiles from submarines. After an action-packed career, Jim decided to retire in the mid-1960s. But retirement didn't mean slowing down for Jim. He set his sights on a new challenge, exploring some of the world's deepest and most mysterious underwater caves. Rumors swirled about these hidden labyrinths, especially one called Devil's Hole. This dangerous spot had claimed many lives, with few daring to enter and even fewer escaping unharmed. Devil's Hole stands out as a truly unique formation, nestled in one of Death Valley National Park's driest corners in Nevada. For centuries, this small, warm pool has attracted explorers. Its existence in such a barren landscape seems impossible. Some scientists believe an earthquake created a large crack in the Amargosa Desert around 500,000 years ago, which eventually filled with spring and rainwater. Today, Devil's Hole continues to shift and evolve due to nearby tectonic activity. Surprisingly, even tremors from distant places like Mexico and Japan can affect it. In one strange incident, a 7.4 magnitude quake in Mexico sent a wave rolling through Devil's Hole's waters, leaving nearby researchers amazed. This event and others point to Devil's Hole being part of a larger hidden network of underground waterways spanning vast distances, possibly linking continents. At first glance, Devil's Hole looks like a small pool with shimmering blue water in a jagged rock crevice. But beneath the surface, it drops to a limestone shelf, then opens into a massive cavern that seems endless. Jim, who dived there often, named this cavern the Infinity Room due to its seemingly bottomless depths. Dark tunnels and chambers branch off from the main room, some containing pockets of toxic air, making it a dangerous place for unprepared divers. Long ago, the Tembisa Shoshone Native Americans knew about Devil's Hole and warned their kids to stay away. They believed it was a path for water babies, dangerous spirits that could lure and trap unsuspecting visitors. Stories also told of friendly shamans who used these underground waters as secret routes, traveling far without surfacing. Later, these spooky tales even caught the attention of Charles Manson, a cult leader who thought Devil's Hole was a gateway to the afterlife. He saw it as the perfect hiding spot during an apocalypse. The site houses one of the world's rarest fish species, the Devil's Hole pupfish. These tiny, inch-long fish live only here, in the top 50 feet of the pool. Over time, the pupfish have adapted to the warm, low-oxygen water, thriving in conditions most fish couldn't handle. In the 1960s, Devil's Hole was still a hidden gem. Jim's dives there started to grab attention when his stories hit newspapers and TV. As interest grew, so did public fascination with the pupfish, and Devil's Hole became both a scientific marvel and a symbol of untamed nature. The idea that such a mysterious, dangerous place existed just hours from Las Vegas struck a chord with many. One captivated reader was Paul Giacintieri, a young cafeteria worker at the Nevada test site who craved escape from his boring job. He longed for adventure to break free from the daily grind. When he shared Jim's story with his new brother-in-law, David Rose, they decided to embark on their own journey to explore Devil's Hole. They figured surviving such a notorious place would make them famous and silence their family's criticism about their lack of direction. The brothers Bill and Jack Alter joined Paul and David's team. Their simple adventure plan was set. On June 20th, 1965, they packed up and headed to Devil's Hole. At the site, they climbed the rough hill, ignoring warning signs and fences. Their lights revealed rare pupfish swimming in the clear water below. The eerie scene amazed them, but Jack got cold feet. He stayed on watch while the others got ready to dive. Paul, David, and Bill entered the water. Their lights barely cut through the darkness as they descended. It felt like floating over an endless pit. Despite the blackness, they pushed on, going down almost 100 feet. Then, things got scary. They lost their bearings in the dark depths and realized they were running out of air. Bill, breathing hard from fear, signaled to surface. In the chaos, they split up. Bill and David came up around midnight, waiting anxiously for Paul. When he didn't appear, they dove back down, hoping to find him in an air pocket. But David vanished too, leaving Bill to surface alone. With no choice left, Bill and Jack raced to Las Vegas for help. By morning, rescue teams arrived as word spread. Families of the missing men gathered, hoping for good news. Meanwhile, famous diver Jim Houts got a call in Southern California. He quickly gathered expert divers, including Harry Wham, a nightclub singer who'd worked with Jim on deep dives before. At Devil's Hole, Jim found a tense crowd. News crews, police, and families waited for updates. After a few dives, Jim found a mask, snorkel, and flashlight on a ledge, giving hope. But more dives failed to find the men, and eventually the rescue stopped. The fate of Paul and David in Devil's Hole's dark depths remains unknown. The Infinity Room keeps its secrets, and even Jim couldn't find out how deep it really goes. Now, security at Devil's Hole is stricter. The memory of those who vanished serves as a grim reminder of the cave's unforgiving nature. This tragic event highlights the dangers lurking in Devil's Hole. Its mysterious depths continue to fascinate and terrify people. The disappearance of Paul and David added to the site's dark legend, making it even more intriguing to thrill seekers and scientists alike. The incident also sparked debates about safety measures and access to natural wonders. It raised questions about the balance between exploration and preservation. Devil's Hole became a symbol of nature's power and the risks of underestimating it. Johann Westhauser's incredible adventure into Germany's treacherous Riesending Cave and his dramatic rescue stands as one of caving's most extraordinary tales. At age 52, this passionate scientist from Stuttgart worked at the Karlsruhe Technology Institute, but his true love lay underground. Since his first venture into the Riesending Cave system in 1995, Johann became completely captivated. He and his team, the Bad Cannstatter Cave Research Group, explored these caves more extensively than anyone else alive. The massive Riesending Cave system sits near the German-Austrian border, its name literally meaning gigantic thing, perfectly describing this vast and intimidating underground realm. The cave plunges almost 12,000 feet deep and winds through more than 12 miles of passages, with countless areas still waiting to be discovered. The cave's interior feels alien, filled with narrow pathways, rushing waterfalls, soaring rock chimneys, and tight, cramped corridors. Slippery rocks coat most passages, creating constant danger and uncertainty. Yet Johann pushed forward, driven by the thrill of finding unexplored territories and potentially linking this cave to a massive super cave system. In early June 2014, Johann and two fellow adventurers embarked on their most ambitious expedition yet, aiming to probe even deeper into Riesending's depths. They dreamed big, hoping to discover a connection between Riesending and Austria's legendary network of roughly 4,000 caves. Such a discovery would make caving history, and Johann burned with determination to achieve it. The team packed hundreds of pounds of essential gear: ropes, harnesses, lights, food, water, and medical supplies, preparing themselves for what would become one of their most perilous journeys ever. On June 7th, 2014, as noon approached, Johann's team entered Riesending's mouth. Their journey began with an intense rope descent, carefully lowering themselves into the cave's dark, wet depths. The initial descent pushed their bodies to the limit. Their muscles screamed as they maneuvered through tight passages, gripping moisture-slicked rocks, with visibility limited to mere feet ahead. Johann's pulse pounded as he concentrated on each crucial move, knowing that one wrong step could spell disaster. The team pushed deeper into Riesending's belly, reaching Base Station 1. Their muscles burned as they paused to gulp down air before continuing their descent. Each station offered brief shelter from the endless darkness, but the cave grew more menacing with every foot they dropped. The second stretch hit them harder. Sharp rocks tore at their ropes while narrow tunnels squeezed in around them. Johann's fierce drive kept him moving forward. Even as he noticed fear creeping into one teammate's eyes, he rallied his friend's spirits, reminding him of their mission: to be the first to unlock Riesending's secrets. The third descent threw even bigger challenges at them. This section twisted through an unpredictable maze of loose rocks and tight passages. Johann's heart jumped when his rope caught suddenly on a jagged edge. Fear shot through him as he imagined tons of rock breaking loose above. He knew death lurked in every wrong move. Fighting his nerves, he pressed on, guiding his team through the gauntlet of falling rocks. Their headlamps cut weak circles in the absolute darkness, creating ghostly shapes on the cave walls. Finally, they stumbled into Base Station 3, drained but thrilled by their progress. A rare horizontal stretch of cave lay ahead, giving them a chance to recover before tackling the next drop. After 10 grueling hours underground, their energy tanks ran low, but their determination stayed strong. The thought of stepping into unexplored territory, every caver's dream, drove them forward. Base Station 4 presented one final challenge: a treacherous slope of shifting rocks. Johann felt confident as he took point, placing each foot with careful precision to maintain his balance on the unstable ground. The cave's silence exploded as rocks suddenly broke loose above them. Before Johann could move, a massive boulder smashed into his helmet. The brutal impact split his protection and knocked him out cold. His body crumpled onto the rocks, completely still. His teammates stood frozen in horror. They had descended over 3,000 feet into Earth's depths, and now Johann lay motionless, critically injured, and impossibly far from help. One teammate stayed to watch over Johann, while the other raced toward the surface to sound the alarm. The grueling climb took almost 10 hours before the exhausted caver finally reached the entrance and called emergency services. News of the accident spread like wildfire, launching what would become one of history's most ambitious and dangerous cave rescues. Getting Johann out would demand days of effort and help from an international team of rescuers. Rescue teams rushed in from all corners of Europe. Over 700 brave souls joined forces in this massive operation. Setting up this rescue mission felt like organizing a war campaign. The team knew getting Johann out would match the challenge of saving someone from Everest's peak. They quickly built a vital communication chain, stretching from the cave's mouth down to Johann's location, making sure supplies and critical messages could flow smoothly. On June 11th, 4 days into Johann's nightmare, the first doctor finally reached him deep underground. Johann was alive, but badly hurt with a serious head injury. His life hung by a thread. But the doctor worked fast to get him stable enough to move. In the days that followed, rescuers pushed their bodies to the limit, fighting through tight spaces, slick rocks, and deadly drops to bring Johann the supplies keeping him alive. The rescuers turned the cave into their temporary home, working in shifts to carry Johann toward daylight. Without any machines to help, they relied on ropes, pulleys, and pure muscle power to move him through each section. The journey tested every ounce of their strength and skill. They wrapped Johann in a special shock-absorbing stretcher, knowing the slightest bump could spell disaster. Sometimes, rescuers had to dangle as human counterweights, slowly climbing vertical walls where one wrong move meant death. After 12 long days underground, on June 19th, Johann finally saw sunlight again. Victory filled the air as a helicopter lifted him away to a Bavarian hospital. He spent weeks in trauma care, with many more months of healing ahead. This intense rescue changed everyone involved, from Johann's caving partners to the hundreds of heroes who risked everything to save his life. After this close call, officials locked down Riesending's entrance. Now, only expert cavers with proper permits and good reasons can explore its depths. The cave had shown once again why locals called it the gigantic thing, a place where wonder and danger dance together in the darkness, guarding its mysteries for another day. In September 2018, renowned English photographer Robbie Schoen embarked on the most challenging assignment of his career. He ventured into Veryovkina Cave in Georgia, the deepest known cave system on Earth, plunging an incredible 7,257 feet beneath the surface. This extraordinary expedition promised to capture unprecedented images of an alien world forever shrouded in darkness. Robbie teamed up with his trusted companion, Jeff Wade, a skilled climber who thrived on pushing boundaries. They joined forces with an elite Russian caving team led by Pavel Demidov, a veteran explorer hardened by years of conquering extreme environments. The core team included the formidable trio of Konstantin, Pitar, and Andreas, each bringing mastery of underground exploration. Nestled in the Arabica Massif of the Western Caucasus, Veryovkina Cave stood as more than just a natural marvel. It represented the ultimate test of human endurance. Tales from previous expeditions described a maze of tight passages, towering vertical drops, and vast chambers that defied imagination. The cave's dual nature of stunning beauty and lethal unpredictability drew explorers while demanding their utmost respect. The team's arrival in Georgia brought an unwelcome surprise. Instead of clear mountain conditions, they faced relentless rainfall that transformed the landscape into a waterlogged terrain. Swollen rivers thundered with runoff from the peaks above, casting a shadow of concern over the expedition. In the treacherous world of cave exploration, rainfall poses a deadly threat. Ancient caves like Veryovkina act as natural water channels, carved by centuries of water flow. Heavy rains can instantly turn these winding passages into raging underground torrents, creating lethal flood conditions that trap even the most experienced cavers. The Russian team members maintained their composure, drawing from their previous successful descents into Veryovkina under similar weather patterns. Despite lingering doubts, their seasoned confidence proved infectious. Final preparations consumed the team completely. They scrutinized every piece of equipment, distributed essential supplies, and drilled their descent strategy repeatedly. The plan involved establishing multiple underground camps, creating crucial rest stops and supply points throughout their journey into Earth's deepest reaches. Robbie meticulously checked his cameras and lights twice, knowing that capturing the cave's mysterious beauty demanded both expertise and perfect equipment. The descent day broke with persistent rain, but nothing could dampen their determination. They stood at the cave's enormous entrance, their helmets secured firmly. The black void swallowed all light, marking the gateway to their underground journey. The outside world's noise faded as they stepped in, replaced by water drops and their rhythmic breathing. The first part of their descent revealed breathtaking sights. Robbie and Jeff's headlamps lit up the cave's hidden treasures. Giant stalactites hung from above like nature's chandeliers, while sharp stalagmites rose from below. The walls sparkled with mineral deposits, creating a mesmerizing underground light show. The cave soon showed its brutal side. The team squeezed through narrow passages on hands and knees. They tackled vertical drops exceeding 300 feet using ropes and harnesses. The air turned frigid and wet, while the crushing weight of Earth pressed down constantly. Robbie battled both physical and psychological challenges. While photographing the cave's striking features, he felt increasingly isolated. Deep underground, surrounded by thick darkness, they knew that simple mistakes like dropping a light or damaging a rope could turn fatal. Their first camp materialized 2,000 feet below ground. These vital stations stored food, water, and emergency supplies, offering crucial rest spots before tackling deeper sections. The team recharged here, preparing for increasingly difficult challenges ahead. The obstacles grew more intense as they descended. At Camp 3, over 4,000 feet underground, they struggled with thick, humid air that made breathing difficult. Narrow tunnels forced them to twist their bodies into uncomfortable positions. The physical demands intensified, matched by growing mental pressure. Through all hardships, Robbie and Jeff watched in amazement as the Russians displayed their expertise. Pavel's team moved with practiced precision, their years of experience evident in every action. Their deep understanding of the cave's characteristics proved crucial, guiding everyone safely through dangerous sections. The team pushed deeper into the cave, finally reaching Camp 5, their ultimate destination, after nearly a week underground. Their bodies ached, but their spirits soared high. They had captured stunning images of cave sections rarely witnessed by human eyes, ready to showcase this hidden wonder to the world above. The relentless rain continued its assault on the surface. Even miles below ground, the storm's fury penetrated the cave's defenses. Water streams now trickled down rock walls, forming growing pools in lower sections. The team recognized the urgent need to start their ascent. The initial water trickle transformed into a violent flood within minutes. The week-long downpour triggered a massive flood pulse that raced through the cave system. Water crashed down vertical shafts and thundered through passages, threatening to swallow everything. The team's survival instincts kicked in as they rushed to higher ground. A side chamber offered brief shelter, but danger lurked everywhere. Rising water levels and bone-chilling spray from the raging current made their situation increasingly desperate. Robbie and Jeff watched in disbelief as their beloved cave transformed into a deadly trap. Their protective suits fought against the water, but every movement demanded intense struggle against the current's raw power. The ascent turned into a brutal battle. Wet ropes became treacherous lifelines, nearly impossible to grip. The flood's deafening roar blocked all verbal communication, forcing them to rely on basic hand signals and pure instinct. Robbie faced his toughest test in a vertical shaft where water pounded down with crushing force. His numbed fingers clung desperately to the rope, muscles screaming in protest. Below, Jeff fought to maintain his footing against the swirling torrent. The team's unity proved their greatest strength. They moved as one, supporting each other through deadly sections. After an endless battle against nature's fury, daylight finally pierced the darkness at the cave's entrance. The team emerged into the open air, exhausted but alive. They had conquered both the world's deepest cave and survived one of its most terrifying floods. The team burst into the sunlight, greeted by stunned faces and cheers of relief. Their epic escape from Veryovkina's flooded depths showcased raw courage and iron will. The ordeal transformed Robbie and Jeff forever, burning deep lessons about nature's raw power and human endurance into their souls. Robbie's camera had captured incredible moments throughout their journey. These images told more than an exploration story. They revealed the fierce determination of people pushing past their limits. Veryovkina Cave still beckons adventurers today, its depths holding both breathtaking wonders and deadly risks. The cave demands respect, offering its treasures only to those who enter fully prepared and focused. Robbie's team survived to tell their tale, their experience serving as both a stark warning and powerful inspiration, proof of what humans can achieve when tested by nature's ultimate challenges. Steve thrived in the great outdoors, finding his true spirit among nature's wonders. He spent his days hiking through thick forests, casting lines in peaceful rivers, and chasing thrilling hunting adventures. The wilderness became his sanctuary, not just a hobby, but his entire way of life. His buddies nicknamed him the ultimate outdoorsman, the go-to guy for any wild expedition. He tackled every challenging situation with remarkable skill and a bright smile, never backing down from nature's tests. His connection to nature ran deeper than mere excitement. A burning curiosity about wildlife drove him to learn more about every creature he encountered. This drive pushed him to earn a biology degree from Arkansas Tech University. His thirst for knowledge didn't stop there. He went on to grab a master's in wildlife ecology and even completed PhD coursework in zoology. These achievements marked his endless journey to understand nature's secrets. The underground world soon captured Steve's imagination, drawing him into its mysterious depths. The dark, twisting passages and hidden chambers of caves became his new playground. Arkansas, with its countless caves, provided the perfect setting for his underground adventures. While others avoided the dangerous caves, Steve embraced them as exciting challenges to overcome. During a laid-back conversation with Hugh Shell, his older friend and a Batesville bookkeeper, Steve learned about Roland Cave. Hugh described this forgotten underground realm that few explorers dared to visit. The story instantly hooked Steve, who quickly convinced his friends, Hogan Bledsoe and Mike Hill, to join a weekend exploration. They set their sights on discovering if Roland Cave linked up with the magnificent Blanchard Springs Caverns, located roughly 2.5 miles away. Blanchard Springs Caverns stood as a popular tourist destination, famous for its stunning natural artwork of stalactites, stalagmites, and flowstones. Roland Cave lived in its shadow as a mysterious and dangerous cousin. Once welcoming tourists, it now sat abandoned due to safety risks. The cave's deadly reputation came from its April floods, which transformed it into a watery grave. Yet these dangers only made Steve and his friends more eager to explore its depths. The team crafted a solid plan: enter Friday, exit Sunday. They packed efficiently with just the essentials. Their combined experience and strong teamwork gave them confidence for the journey ahead. The 4 adventurers stood at Roland Cave's entrance that afternoon, facing their next challenge. The cave's narrow opening pulled them in, surrounded by cool, damp air. Inside, nature's raw beauty unfolded. Slick, stained walls stretched around them, while sharp stalactites hung low from the ceiling, forcing them to duck and weave as they moved deeper into the darkness. A faint, rotting smell filled their nostrils, adding to the cave's eerie feel. Mother Nature had other plans that day. Despite promises of clear weather, heavy rain started pouring down outside. The group pushed forward, unaware of the growing storm, splashing through dark waters that rose from their ankles to their waists. Their mission to reach Blanchard Springs Caverns hit a roadblock when they found a massive wall of rocks blocking their path. With no way forward, they had to turn back. Saturday arrived as they started their return journey. Exhaustion crept in, and their supplies ran low, pushing them to move faster. Their hearts sank when they reached the entrance tunnel. Flooding had completely blocked their escape route. The water ran too deep to cross without swimming gear. Left with no choice, they created a temporary shelter using their raft and ponchos, hoping the water would drop soon. Days dragged on, and their situation turned grim. Food disappeared completely, and water supplies hit rock bottom. Hugh's diabetes created extra pressure. His life hung in the balance without his medicine. The cave's constant cold and wet conditions threatened to make them sick, adding to their growing fears. The group fought to stay organized, taking shifts to watch the water levels for any changes. But hope started slipping away. Even Steve, usually the group's ray of sunshine, started believing they might not survive. His mind drifted to Joe, his wife, and their fresh start together. Guilt crushed him as he thought about leading his friends into this deadly trap, wondering if they'd ever see daylight again. A friend who knew their plans spotted trouble when the rain started and called for help. Local rescue teams jumped into action, but couldn't beat the dangerous conditions. The situation grew so serious that the US Navy sent their best divers to lead the rescue mission. The race against time had begun, with 4 lives hanging in the balance deep within rolling caves' flooded passages. The trapped adventurers had no idea about the rescue mission unfolding outside. Steve's heart leaped when he heard an unexpected sound that Monday. A Navy diver burst through the flooded tunnel, bringing their first ray of hope. The diver handed over a rope and laid out their escape plan. Each person would swim through the underwater passage using scuba equipment to reach safety. The group's stomachs turned at the thought of scuba diving. None of them had ever tried it before. Their bodies, weak from days without food and warmth, struggled to grasp the quick diving lessons from the rescue team. But the flooded tunnel left them with 0 options. The friends entered the water one after another. Mike led the way, but faced immediate trouble when his mask slipped off, nearly spelling disaster. Hogan dove in next and made it through smoothly. Hugh followed, pushing through his weakened state to conquer the dangerous tunnel. Steve went last. Before diving in, he paused to take in the gravity of their ordeal, making a silent promise to never take such risks again. Cheers, hugs, and tears greeted Steve as he emerged from the cave. But their celebration turned bitter when tragedy struck. An experienced rescue diver suffered a fatal heart attack right after completing the mission. The hero's death cast a dark cloud over their miraculous rescue. Steve's brush with death changed his approach to adventure. He kept exploring the outdoors, but now carried deep respect for nature's power. His passion for wildlife and conservation led him to his dream role, leading the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission. He held this position longer than anyone else before him. Even after Steve lost his battle with cancer in 2001, his spirit lives on. His life story stands as a powerful reminder of what happens when courage meets passion. Curiosity joins hands with caution, and love for nature guides every step forward. Deep in the heart of Gilchrist County, Florida, lies a hidden world of wonder and danger known as the Devil's Eye Cave System. Just a short drive west of High Springs, this underwater labyrinth is part of the renowned Ginnie Springs Resort Complex, a popular destination for both adventure seekers and nature lovers alike. With 2 main entrances, aptly named Devil's Eye and Devil's Ear, the cave system offers a glimpse into an awe-inspiring but treacherous realm beneath the surface, where the beauty of nature intertwines with the risks that come with exploring such an enigmatic environment. The Devil's Eye is a striking circular opening, about 20 feet across and just as deep, creating an inviting yet intimidating portal into the depths below. Below this mesmerizing entrance stretches an expansive network of underwater passageways, with over 30,000 feet mapped so far, though large portions remain unexplored and shrouded in mystery. Carlos Fonseca was not your average diver. Hailing from Caledon, Ontario, Carlos had made diving his passion and his way of life. For him, it wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling that resonated deeply within him. His dedication opened doors to incredible adventures and lifelong friendships, including his membership in Great Lakes Technical Divers, GLTD, a community of like-minded individuals who shared his enthusiasm for underwater exploration. Through this group, Carlos pursued his dream of exploration, pushing the boundaries of what was possible underwater, always eager to learn and grow in his craft. On August 8, 2013, Carlos embarked on what seemed like just another thrilling dive, this time in the Devil's Eye Cave System. He and a couple of close friends, all experienced divers, drove to the site, ready for adventure and the thrill of exploration. The group had planned this dive for weeks, preparing their gear and mapping out their route meticulously, ensuring they were well equipped for the challenges that lay ahead. The goal was to explore deeper sections of the cave, pushing their limits just a little further, eager to uncover the hidden wonders that awaited them in the depths. As they prepped their equipment, Carlos grabbed a tank labeled with markings, indicating it was filled with oxygen suitable for a depth of 20 feet. His friends, noticing this, raised concerns. Why would he use an oxygen tank at depths beyond its safety limits? They exchanged worried glances, knowing the risks involved in diving, especially in a place as notorious as the Devil's Eye. Carlos, confident in his skills and experience, brushed off their worries, assuring them the tank was filled with air and he had prepared it himself. Trusting his judgment, they let it slide, though a lingering sense of unease hung in the air. As they descended into the depths of the cave, the water enveloped them and the world above faded away. The beauty of the underwater landscape was breathtaking, with shimmering light filtering through the water, illuminating the intricate formations of rock and the vibrant aquatic life that thrived in this hidden realm. Carlos led the way, navigating through the winding passages with ease, his heart racing with excitement and anticipation. The thrill of exploration coursed through him, and he felt alive in a way that only the depths of the ocean could provide. However, as they ventured deeper, the atmosphere shifted, the light began to fade, and the sense of isolation grew stronger. The cave's beauty was undeniable, but so was the danger that lurked in the shadows. Carlos and his friends pressed on, determined to uncover the secrets of the Devil's Eye, unaware of the challenges that awaited them in the dark, uncharted waters. Everything seemed fine at first, and the thrill of adventure filled the air. But as they ventured farther, about 400 feet upstream, something went terribly wrong. Carlos, who had been leading confidently just moments before, suddenly began convulsing, his body betraying him in a shocking turn of events. He lost consciousness and began to sink, his body becoming a lifeless weight in the water. At a depth of 85 feet, his body succumbed to what is known as oxygen toxicity, a dangerous condition caused by breathing in too much oxygen under pressure, a risk that even the most seasoned divers must be aware of. For those unfamiliar with the term, oxygen toxicity is a serious condition that occurs when the levels of oxygen in the body become too high, especially under the increased pressure found underwater. It can lead to seizures, lung damage, and in severe cases, death. At 85 feet, the partial pressure of oxygen in Carlos's tank was about 3.6, well above the safe limit for diving at that depth. This overload proved fatal, triggering the seizures that led to his sudden collapse, leaving his friends in a state of panic and disbelief. Carlos's teammates acted quickly, their training kicking in as they pulled him to the surface as fast as they could while ensuring their own safety. Other divers in the area, including trained cave instructors, rushed to help, their instincts driving them to assist in any way possible. CPR was administered in a desperate attempt to revive him, and Carlos was transported to a nearby hospital, where hopes for his recovery dwindled. Tragically, despite their efforts and the urgency of the situation, he was pronounced dead, leaving a profound sense of loss in the hearts of those who knew him. News of Carlos's death spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the diving community. How could such a seasoned and skilled diver fall victim to something so preventable? Speculation ran wild, with some questioning his expertise, suggesting he may not have been as capable as people believed. But those who knew Carlos dismissed these claims vehemently. He was an expert, a man who had dedicated his life to mastering the craft of diving, and his reputation was built on years of hard work and commitment. Investigations into the incident revealed the tragic oversight that led to this heartbreaking outcome. The oxygen tank Carlos used contained 98% oxygen, far exceeding the safety threshold for the depths he was exploring. This mistake, likely an accidental oversight, proved fatal. His other tanks were correctly filled with a safer mix of gases, but it was the stage bottle he relied on that led to his untimely death. A stark reminder of the importance of double-checking equipment before embarking on such perilous adventures. Carlos's story serves as a sobering reminder of the risks involved in cave diving, a sport that demands respect and caution. Even the most experienced divers are not immune to mistakes, and the consequences can be devastating. Hidden in the pine forest east of Mount Gambier, there's a small, peaceful-looking sinkhole with a dark secret. People who live nearby know it as Allen's Cave, but its other name, Death Cave, tells the real story of its tragic history. From above, the cave looks safe and beautiful. The clear water sparkles in the sunlight, making divers want to explore its mysteries. But under this calm surface lies a dangerous maze that can trap even the best divers. The cave showed its deadly nature in 1972 when 3 young people lost their lives in a terrible accident that left the diving community in shock. Though it's only 65 feet deep, Allen's Cave has become known as a place of danger and a reminder of how dangerous it can be to underestimate nature's power. Allen's Cave is a strange mix of beauty and danger. At first glance, it looks simple enough, just a narrow but pretty underwater space to explore. But those who really know the cave understand that this small sinkhole is actually very dangerous. The cave starts with an open space near the entrance, but then turns into tight passages with silty walls before opening into a bigger cave room filled with crystal clear water. The cave's beauty can trick divers into going deeper, making them forget about the dangers below. The bottom of the cave is covered in deep, soft mud that creates an invisible threat. If someone moves carelessly, they can stir up this mud, creating thick clouds that make it impossible to see. When this happens, even experienced divers can get lost, finding themselves trapped in complete darkness underwater. On Monday, October 9th, 1972, 4 divers, Ron, Sandra, Christopher, and Dave, decided to explore Allen's Cave. They had spent the weekend checking out other sinkholes nearby and were heading back to Adelaide. The group had different levels of experience. Ron was only 17 and had been diving for just 18 months. Sandra, 18, had about the same experience. Christopher, also 17, had been diving for 2 years and knew a bit more than the others. Dave, who led the group, was 39 and had been diving for 15 years. But even though Dave had lots of diving experience, there was one big problem. None of them knew how to dive in caves properly. They only knew how to dive in open water, which is very different from cave diving. This missing knowledge would end up costing them dearly. During their trip back home, the group noticed Allen's Cave and thought they'd do one last dive before ending their day. They didn't plan this dive carefully. They just wanted a quick look around. Thinking they wouldn't go far inside, they left important safety gear behind, including the guideline they needed to mark their way. The dive started peacefully. They swam into the water and looked around the shallow parts near the entrance. The water was so clear they could see everything, and the underwater view was beautiful. Big rocks and amazing stone shapes were all around them, making it feel like they were in a magical underwater world. Then they found a low, flat tunnel about 19 feet under the water. Dave, who was leading the group, wanted to check it out quickly because it looked interesting. The tunnel was tight, only 3 feet high and 9 feet wide, but they could swim through it. They followed Dave one after another into the tunnel. As they swam deeper, it got harder to avoid touching the muddy bottom in the narrow space. After swimming about 19 feet, they came into a bigger cave room with perfectly clear water. For a moment, they were amazed. The cave was stunning, a beautiful underwater room that nobody above could see. But their amazement quickly changed to fear. When Ron looked back at the tunnel they came through, he couldn't see anything. The soft mud they had stirred up had made the water so cloudy that their exit was completely hidden. Fear started spreading as they realized how bad things were. The mud cloud was so thick that even their lights couldn't shine through the dark water. They were stuck, couldn't see, and were lost in an underwater maze with no clear way out. The clear water that had amazed them earlier was now a dark mix of mud, leaving them in complete darkness. Trying to escape, the divers felt along the cave walls, hoping to find the tunnel they came through. But every move they made just stirred up more mud, making things even worse. Their air tanks were getting low and time was running out. Ron tried to stay calm despite being scared. At one point, he bumped into Dave and grabbed him, hoping they could find the way out together. But everything was too confusing and scary. They lost hold of each other, and Ron was left alone in the dark cave. In the pitch-black water, Ron heard faint noises, the knocking of air tanks and the sound of breathing equipment. These sounds meant his friends were close, but he couldn't see them through the muddy water. His heart raced when his breathing device came loose for a moment. Though he fixed it quickly, he knew his air was running very low. Just when he was about to give up hope, Ron saw a dim green light above him. This light meant he was near the surface, a chance to survive. Using all his strength, he swam up toward it. Within seconds, he broke through to the surface, taking deep breaths of fresh air. Though Ron made it out alive, he couldn't feel happy. His friends were still stuck in the cave. Wanting to help them, he quickly told the rescue team and tried making noise with his air tank, hoping the others could follow the sound. But the thick mud in the water and the cave's confusing tunnels made it impossible for them to escape. Dave, Sandra, and Christopher never came out of the cave. The next day, they called Mac Laurie, a professional diver and Dave's good friend, to find the bodies. It was a dangerous job. Using special diving equipment with lots of air, Mac went into the dangerous cave. He found Dave's body near the entrance, while Sandra and Christopher were found together in a dead-end tunnel. They had probably thought it was the way out during their desperate attempt to escape. The Allen's Cave accident deeply affected everyone who loved diving. It showed how dangerous underwater exploring could be and why proper training and equipment were so important. After this tragedy, they sealed the cave permanently. Now, a concrete block and gate stop anyone from entering what has become an underwater grave. The Allen's Cave disaster didn't happen just because of bad luck. It happened because the divers weren't prepared and didn't respect how dangerous cave diving could be. Many things went wrong. They didn't have a safety rope to follow. They didn't bring extra air tanks, and they weren't experienced enough with cave diving. Cave diving isn't like normal diving. It needs special training, better equipment, and a real understanding of what could go wrong. It's not something people should do without being fully prepared. Allen's Cave reminds us that even beautiful places can be deadly if we're not careful. Today, the cave stands quiet, teaching us about the lives lost and the lessons we learned. While the water might look peaceful on top, underneath lies a scary reminder of how powerful nature can be. For anyone thinking about exploring unknown places, Allen's Cave has an important message. Don't let beautiful things fool you, and never think you're too safe. Born on April 1st, 1949, in Gainesville, Florida, Sheck loved water since he was young. As a teen, he found scuba diving and quickly became amazed by what lay hidden under the water. When he was just 16, he started exploring underwater caves, which was dangerous but exciting. This activity needed both skill and the ability to stay calm when things got tough. His passion for exploring soon became what he wanted to do with his life. Cave diving is a sport where you need to do everything perfectly, both before and during the dive. Unlike diving in open water, caves are dark, closed in, and often like mazes. Divers must trust their gear, their training, and their gut feelings to stay alive. Even small mistakes, like getting lost, running out of air, or having equipment breakdown, can be fatal. But for Sheck, these dangers were part of what made it exciting. He worked for many years to make his methods better, create safety rules, and even make new equipment to improve the sport. His work helped make cave diving what it is today, and other divers saw him as a legend. Sheck did many amazing things in his career. He was the first person to dive deeper than 800 feet, 244 meters, a depth that most people wouldn't even think about trying. He could do this because his body handled nitrogen narcosis better than most. This is something that makes divers confused when they go very deep. While others might start seeing things or get mixed up, Shek stayed clear-headed, which let him explore places no one else could. Even though he did dangerous things, Shek was also someone who taught others. He wrote books like Basic Cave Diving, A Blueprint for Survival, and CAVERS Measureless to Man, which divers still use today to learn. His books talked a lot about being prepared, thinking about risks, and following safety rules. He also created new gear like the Octopus, a backup breathing system that lets divers share air in emergencies, which is still saving lives today. By 1973, people outside of diving knew about Shek too. That year, he joined a research project in the Bahamas, where he lived underwater for 8 days in Hydrolab, a special underwater house made for science studies. This showed everyone how well he could handle extreme situations and proved he was truly a pioneer. Though Shek was very successful, he knew the dangers of cave diving well. He lost many friends to diving accidents over the years. These sad events made him work even harder to make cave diving safer. Still, Shek knew that diving would always be risky. He accepted this, driven by his strong desire to discover new things. Zacuton was a really tough challenge for Shek. This huge sinkhole was part of a group of water-filled holes and caves, made when limestone rock fell in. Its straight-down walls went into what looked like a never-ending pit, filled with water that was clear but dark at the same time. For many years, scientists and divers wanted to know how deep it went. In 1994, Shek and his friend Jim Bowden decided to dive into Zacuton, pushing themselves harder than ever before. They planned everything very carefully. Both divers carried several tanks filled with trimix, a special mix of oxygen, helium, and nitrogen that helps divers think clearly when they go deep. They also put extra tanks at different depths for their way back up. Shek and Jim used different ropes to go down, which was safer because they wouldn't get tangled up and could dive on their own. On April 6th, the dive started well. When Shek got to 290 feet down, he left one of his tanks there to use later when coming back up. Jim, who was diving behind him, switched to a smaller backup tank. Even though the water was cold and dark, both men stayed focused as they went down quickly to reach their goal. When they got about 800 feet down, the heavy pressure started causing problems. Jim saw Shek's light moving faster than it should, which was strange because Shek was known for being very careful. Later, they found out Shek had gone down to 904 feet, breaking records but getting into big trouble. Going that deep causes lots of problems for divers. The huge pressure can make people shake, get confused, and make bad choices. Doctors call this high-pressure nervous syndrome, HPNS. Experts think Shek started having these problems as he went down. At the same time, Jim had his own troubles. His breathing equipment broke, and he had to open and close the air valve by hand for each breath. Jim knew this was dangerous, so he decided to stop going down and start heading back up. As Jim went up, he looked for Shek but couldn't find him. Not seeing any bubbles from Shek's breathing was very worrying. Up on the surface, everyone was getting more and more worried, including Shek's wife, Mary Ellen, and Jim's wife, Kristovich. Hours went by with no sign of Shek. Mary Ellen even dove down 250 feet to look for bubbles or any sign of her husband, but she couldn't find anything. After spending 9 long hours coming up slowly to avoid getting sick, Jim finally reached the surface, very tired and upset. He told everyone that Shek was missing. The sad truth hit everyone hard. One of the best cave divers ever was probably gone forever. 2 days later, they found Shek's body in Zacuton. His dive computer showed he had gone down 904 feet before he died. No one knows exactly what killed him. The doctors who checked his body couldn't find a clear reason, but experts think it was probably a mix of things. The pressure affecting his nerves, his equipment having problems, and the huge weight of all that water pushing down on him. Sheck's death hit the diving community really hard. He had spent many years showing others how to be brave, but also safe while diving. He came up with many new ways to dive safely that still help keep people alive today. Even though diving was dangerous, Sheck thought it was worth the risk. He once said, "If I have to die, I'd rather die exploring." These words show how brave he was and how much he wanted to push what humans could do. Zacuton is still one of the scariest and most dangerous places to dive in the world. Sheck's story reminds us how risky it can be to explore new places, but it also shows how humans keep trying to discover new things no matter what. His life and what he did still make people want to be adventurers, scientists, and dreamers today. Even though Sheck's life ended sadly, people will never forget what he did for diving. Hidden deep under southern France's Ardèche region, a network of underwater caves lures brave explorers. Among these, Dragonair Cave stands out as the most feared and challenging. This water-filled cavern has claimed many lives, even those of expert divers. Only tiny shrimp thrive in its cold, dark waters. The cave's twisting passages often become deadly traps for those who enter. Eric Establi, a master cave diver, felt drawn to Dragonair Cave's dangers. He had spent years honing his skills underwater. The cave's unexplored areas called to him, and he aimed to map every inch of it. Diving in Dragonair Cave brings extreme dangers. The cave's silt-filled water can reduce visibility to almost nothing in seconds. One wrong move can stir up this silt, causing a diver's worst nightmare, a total blackout. In these moments, all sense of direction vanishes. Up becomes down, and the diver floats in complete darkness. The only choice is to wait for the silt to settle, but waiting too long means running out of air. Eric understood these risks better than most, yet he kept diving. Cave air often contains deadly gases that can cause confusion, dizziness, or even death if breathed. Despite these dangers, Eric made Dragonair Cave his life's work. Year after year, he explored its tunnels, slowly mapping more of the cave, driven by his dream to chart it completely. Eric's love for diving began in the 1990s when he was about 20. He started exploring caves and quickly became one of the world's top cave divers. His friends, Felipe and Emmerich, often joined him, forming a tight team that shared many underwater adventures. Eric's main goal was always to map unexplored caves, and Dragonair Cave became his obsession. Eric plunged into Dragonair Cave on October 3rd, 2010, aiming to push deeper than ever before. He packed 2 rebreathers, 2 underwater scooters, 5 air tanks, and over 1,400 feet of dive line. He planned for a 6-hour dive into the unknown. The dive started well. Eric glided through narrow passages, venturing deeper into the cave. But trouble hit at 1,200 feet in. He accidentally brushed a wall, stirring up a thick silt cloud. Visibility dropped to 0. Darkness engulfed him. Eric stayed calm, waiting for the silt to settle. But it didn't clear fast enough. Eric decided to push on despite poor visibility. He moved carefully, avoiding sharp edges that could damage his gear or air supply. Alone in the murky water, he reached a new section of the cave. Then things got worse. A sudden rockfall trapped Eric in a small area. Silt filled the water again, creating a complete blackout. His headlamp couldn't pierce the swirling sediment. Eric found himself stuck with limited air and no clear exit. When Eric didn't return on time, worry set in. By October 4th, a rescue mission began. Expert cave divers Rick Stanton and John Valanthin stepped up to lead the search. They had gained fame for rescuing 12 boys and their coach from a Thai cave. They knew Eric from previous French expeditions and didn't hesitate to help. Rick and John entered Dragonair Cave at 3 p.m. on October 4th, armed with top-notch gear. They knew the mission would be tough, but were determined to find their friend. As they descended, they faced thick silt that nearly blinded them. At 2,427 feet in, they discovered the cause. A massive underwater rock slide had disturbed the cave floor. The rescuers pressed on, fighting against the murky water and treacherous terrain. Every inch forward brought new challenges. Sharp rocks threatened to snag their equipment. The darkness seemed to close in around them. But Rick and John's experience and determination drove them forward. They called out Eric's name, hoping for a response. The cave's twisting passages distorted sound, making it hard to pinpoint any potential replies. Time ticked by, and their air supply dwindled. The pressure mounted with each passing minute. As they ventured deeper, the rescuers faced a grim reality. The cave had changed dramatically since Eric's entry. New passages had opened, while others had closed off. The rockfall had altered the cave's layout, making their search even more difficult. Despite the odds, Rick and John refused to give up. They methodically searched every accessible area, knowing that Eric's life hung in the balance. The cold water sapped their strength, but their resolve remained unshaken. They pushed on, driven by the hope of finding their friend alive. The team hit a dead end at 2,559 feet. They ran out of air and had to turn back, leaving Eric unfound. By October 6th, the rescuers had a new plan. They started digging a vertical shaft near the cave for another way in. Other divers checked nearby caves for connections to Dragonair Cave, hoping to find an exit for Eric. Rick and John went back in, but had to retreat again before reaching Eric. Time was running out, and hope faded as days passed. After several failed attempts, Rick and John made one last push. They entered with slimmer gear to squeeze through tight spots. Hours of tough navigation led to a breakthrough. They found a small gap at the top of the rockfall, just big enough to squeeze through. On the other side, they pushed deeper into unexplored areas. After swimming another 600 feet, they found Eric. He lay 15 feet below in a small chamber. It looked like he tried to find air, but ran out before escaping. Rick and John carefully prepared Eric's body for recovery. But as they tried to bring him back through the narrow gap, his body got stuck. They realized they'd be trapped if they kept trying. Reluctantly, they left Eric behind. They did retrieve his dive computer, which held crucial data about his final moments. Eric's computer showed he drowned on the first day of his dive. Despite the rescue team's heroic efforts, Eric had been trapped too long. In January 2011, after months of failed recovery attempts, the French Speleology Federation called off the search. Eric's body remains in Dragonair Cave, a stark reminder of the risks in exploring the unknown. The cave's treacherous paths and unexpected changes made the search incredibly challenging. Rick and John's experience proved crucial. They navigated the murky waters with precision, always aware of the dangers lurking in the darkness. Their teamwork and quick thinking helped them overcome obstacles that would have stopped less skilled divers. Dragonair Cave stands as a somber monument to Eric's final adventure. It reminds us of nature's raw power and the indomitable spirit of those who dare to explore its depths. Eric's legacy lives on, inspiring future generations of cavers to push boundaries while respecting the dangers that come with venturing into the unknown. Near the town of Cumal in Mexico, close to the Yucatan Peninsula, lies the Aiolo Cave Complex, a vast underwater maze shrouded in mystery. A huge sinkhole marks the entrance to this sprawling cave system. Over centuries, water erodes underground limestone, causing it to collapse and form sinkholes. As water carves out new tunnels and chambers, these cave networks grow bigger and more complex. Divers first explored Aiolo Cave in the 1980s and 1990s, mapping out nearly 20,000 feet, about 3.8 miles, of passages. They place thick ropes along the cave walls as guidelines for future divers to follow explored paths and avoid getting lost. These ropes showed which parts of the cave had been discovered. After this initial exploration, the cave fell into obscurity for about a decade. In 2012, a team of skilled divers returned to Aiolo Cave. They aimed to remap the cave, replace old guidelines, and find new passageways. Their efforts paid off, adding another 5,000 feet, around 1,525 meters, of new guidelines to the system. Inside, a maze of narrow passages and chambers twisted and turned, making navigation treacherous. Aolo Cave's chambers held thick layers of silt at their bottoms. The water stayed clear when calm, but any movement stirred up sediment, turning it murky fast. This sudden darkness could disorient divers, leading to panic. Luckily, guidelines with cookies, special markers pointing to the exit, helped divers navigate even in poor visibility. But these lifelines had a catch: they weren't always continuous. Cave walls and rope lengths sometimes forced gaps. To explore further, divers used temporary jump lines, removing them on the way out. Donald Cerrone, born in Denver in 1983, knew the dangers of caves like Aolo well. A wild child prone to fights, Donald found his calling in cave diving and combat sports. Donald's passion for cave diving remained strong. He understood the risks, but couldn't resist the thrill of exploring underwater mazes. Each dive brought new challenges and tested his skills. Donald's experiences in both fighting and diving taught him to stay calm under pressure and think quickly in dangerous situations. As Donald prepared for his Aolo cave dive, he knew the risks he faced: the cave's reputation for sudden visibility. Changes and tricky navigation didn't deter him. Instead, it fueled his excitement. He meticulously checked his gear, reviewed the cave maps, and mentally prepared for the challenges ahead. Donald's past experiences had taught him to respect the cave, but not fear it. He was ready to face whatever Aolo threw at him, armed with skill, experience, and a healthy dose of caution. Donald and Alex geared up for their Aolo cave dive in Cumul, Mexico in summer 2018. They'd waited months for this adventure. On August 17th, Donald hugged Lindsay and their baby goodbye. Lindsay felt uneasy about this dive, not fully trusting Alex's skills. Before diving, Donald and Alex reviewed their plan. Remembering Lindsay's worries, Donald packed an extra air tank. They used the rule of thirds for air management. 1/3 to enter, 1/3 to exit, 1/3 as backup. The dive started well. They followed the main guideline, taking in the underwater sights. But trouble hit at the first guideline's end. They needed to jump to a new line. Alex, more experienced, went first. He looped his dive light lanyard around his neck to free his hands. As he reached for the new line, his buoyancy device broke loose, floating up. Startled, Alex thrashed, getting tangled in the guideline. Donald watched, horrified, as Alex struggled with the rope. Keeping his distance to avoid getting trapped too, Donald faced a tough choice. His training stressed self-preservation in cave diving, where rescuing a panicked diver often leads to 2 deaths. Donald knew he had to focus on surviving. He thought of his promise to Lindsay. With Alex in trouble and visibility dropping to 0, that promise seemed far off. Alex's light vanished in the murky water. Donald feared his friend had lost his regulator. Despite the grim situation, he couldn't leave Alex. He swam toward Alex's last known spot, but the darkness made it impossible to find him. The cave's dangers became real. Silt clouds filled the water, disorienting Donald. He relied on his training, feeling for the guideline. Each second felt like an eternity as he searched for Alex. The cave's silence, broken only by his breathing, added to the tension. Donald's mind raced. He thought of Lindsay and their baby, of his past close calls. The weight of the situation hit him hard. He wanted to help Alex, but knew the risks. Every move could stir up more silt, making things worse. He inched forward, straining to see or hear any sign of Alex. The darkness pressed in from all sides. Donald's heart pounded as he realized how quickly a routine dive had turned into a fight for survival. Time seemed to stand still in the pitch-black water. Donald's training kicked in. He focused on his breathing, trying to stay calm. He knew panic would only waste precious air and energy. As he searched, Donald recalled other tight spots he'd been in. The motocross crash, the leaky dry suit. Those experiences had taught him to stay cool under pressure. Now, in Aolo Cave's depths, he needed that skill more than ever. Donald kept moving, carefully feeling his way along the guideline. He hoped to bump into Alex or spot a flash of light. The cave's twists and turns made the search harder. Donald knew every second counted, but he had to move slowly to avoid stirring up more silt. The situation tested Donald's limits. He balanced the urge to find his friend with the need to ensure his own safety. The cave's dangers were real, and one wrong move could trap them both. Donald faced a new challenge. His oxygen levels dropped fast. Thoughts of his family raced through his mind. Panic set in, something he'd never felt in the octagon. The pitch-black cave overwhelmed him with fear. His breathing quickened. He hit his head on the cave's ceiling, causing sharp pain. Donald checked his compass and dive watches. He had about an hour of air left and knew the exit's general direction. He felt his way along the cave walls slowly. Obstacles blocked his progress at every turn. Desperate, he moved erratically, searching for any way out. By luck, he found the main guideline again, his lifeline to safety. The exit lay far off, nearly 1,000 yards away. Silted out water made visibility almost zero. Donald knew of a split in the guideline ahead. One path led to the exit, the other deeper into the cave. Choosing wrong meant certain death. Donald pushed on, trusting his instincts and compass. After what felt like forever, Donald's hand touched the crack in the cave's ceiling he remembered from the dive's start. He followed it until he spotted a faint glimmer of light. Sunlight. He knew he neared the surface. With new hope, Donald swam toward the light. Moments later, he broke through the water's surface, gasping for fresh air. To his surprise, Alex sat on the shore, smiling. Somehow, Alex had freed himself from the guideline and escaped the cave. For Donald, the experience changed his life. He never expected to come so close to death. It reminded him how fragile life could be. Donald Cerrone still dives today, but with more caution. He spends most of his time on his New Mexico ranch with his wife and kids. He cherishes every moment with them. That dive in the Iolo Cave complex marked a turning point in his life. It made him value his family time even more. The cave dive tested Donald's limits like never before. He faced real danger, with death a constant threat. The darkness and silence of the cave added to the intense situation. Every move could have stirred up more silt, making things worse. This final adventure began on a brisk Saturday morning with Donald and his boys, Christopher and Roger, filled with anticipation. The Crooked Swamp cave system had always intrigued Donald. With its complex network of passages and chambers, each one offering a new challenge, Donald and his two boys were leading a scout group. The group members were excited too, though some were visibly nervous about the day ahead. However, Donald was not experiencing his first trip. He had always enjoyed leading the scout into many different mysterious caves. Besides Donald, another scoutmaster joined the trip. The group of 12 boys was a mix of eager and nervous scouts, each ready to face the claustrophobic conditions of the cave. As they gathered at the cave entrance, Donald and Jim laid down the ground rules once more. Safety was paramount. The boys were to stay close, always keep their buddy in sight, and only explore the areas the scoutmasters had cleared. The entrance to Crooked Swamp Cave was almost hidden. A small opening, just 16 inches high, 28 inches wide. It was a test of courage for the scouts, many of whom had never faced such tight spaces before. As they squeezed through the entrance, initial anxiety turned into excitement and anticipation. Inside, they found themselves in a relatively spacious room, about 300 square feet with ceilings between 8 and 11 feet high. Donald and Jim positioned themselves at opposite ends of the room, keeping a watchful eye on the boys as they explored the larger paths branching out from the main chamber. The main chamber pointed to different smaller tunnels, but both the scout leaders were unsure of the path to take, as any one of them could lead into a dead end. However, the boys were much smaller than the two men. Therefore, Donald was convinced that boys will easily make it through the tiniest of the paths. But stupid of his act, he didn't think it for himself. Donald eagerly decided to explore a smaller tunnel that branched off from the main room. Donald, standing at 511 and weighing 160 pounds, was familiar with tight squeezes in caves. His familiarity with caving gave him confidence as he slid into the 18 by 20 inches passage. The mud made the going slippery, but he managed to make steady progress. His sons kept close, ready to relay information back to the group. But as he maneuvered through a tight turn, Donald suddenly felt the ground give way beneath him. He slid into a narrow crevice, unable to stop his descent. Though the fall was only a few feet, Donald found himself wedged in a keyhole-shaped tunnel that narrowed to just 5 inches at the bottom. His arms were pinned at his sides, and every attempt to move only wedged him further into the crevice. He called out to his sons, instructing them to stop and stay calm. He tried to push himself out of the tunnel, but it was no use. Donald remained stuck. Donald asked Christopher to help him get out of the tunnel. He tried to grab the shoes of his father surrounded by mud, but due to confined space, he was left with no choice but to go and get some help. Christopher and Roger, realizing the severity of the situation, retreated to fetch Jim. Jim squeezed into the narrow passage and found Donald's legs protruding from the tight turn. The 30-degree angle made it nearly impossible to pull him out. Each tug only seemed to tighten the cave's grip. Rocks that had loosened during Donald's slide now blocked any backward movement. Hours passed, with Donald still trapped. Jim and the boys couldn't free him, so they called for help. A specialized cave rescue team arrived, facing the daunting task of navigating the 18-inch wide tunnel. They quickly got to work, trying to rig up ropes to pull Donald out of the tight passage. However, despite the combined strength of several people, their efforts only wedged him further under the ledge and rock that trapped him. The rescuers couldn't reach the rock blocking the path, and Donald's hands were pinned by his body in the narrow fissure he had slid into. Realizing that pulling him free wasn't an option, they brought in chisels and small jackhammers to break apart the larger pieces of rock. This painstaking work in the cramped space yielded little progress, but they persisted, hoping to eventually free him. Rescuers managed to keep Donald as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. They used heat lamps and warm water bottles on his exposed legs, but the cold cave air and constant contact with the rock were relentless. The temperature inside the cave was a mere 57 degrees, and hypothermia was a real threat. Cavers, with extensive knowledge of the system, knew of another cave that connected to the tunnel near where Donald was trapped. They entered this cave from the opposite side and explored until they found a passage leading directly to the tiny tunnel. However, only the smallest CAVERS could navigate this narrow passage. Two sisters, Lynn and Nancy Taylor, were perfect for the task. Nancy at 52,105 pounds, and Lynn at 5 pounds 86 pence, had the advantage of their petite size. Lynn, using her tiny frame, managed to wiggle through the extremely narrow passages in the second cave. She reached the point where the caves connected, but it was only 5 inches wide at that spot. Despite stretching as far as she could, Lynn was unable to reach Donald's head. The cramped, winding passage kept her about 2 feet away from him. Heartbroken, they realized that rescuing Donald from that side was impossible, leaving the rescue team unable to provide him with warm water or nourishment. Time was running out, so they called in a specialized rescue team. This new team began digging with the hope of breaking through to the section of the tunnel where Donald was trapped. They worked tirelessly throughout Sunday, trying to reach the right depth. However, by the end of the day, they were still about 12 feet away from the target tunnel. They continued to dig laterally, attempting to find a way to connect to the passage. By Sunday night, Donald had been trapped for 36 hours in a downward angled position. With each passing hour, Donald's condition deteriorated. He grew colder and more disoriented. The rescuers, undeterred, kept digging in hopes of reaching him from another angle. By Monday morning, nearly 48 hours after he had become trapped, the rescuers heard faint grunts from Donald. It was a sign that he was still alive, although suffering from severe hypothermia. This discovery fueled the team's determination to dig even faster and more efficiently. The situation again shifted to terror when they were hit with a challenging bedrock area that was almost impossible to dig through. With nearly 2 days of entrapment, no food, no water, and the relentless cold, the rescuers began to fear for Donald's survival. The nurse used a Doppler machine and EKG to check for signs of life, but found no pulse in Donald's legs. Despite this, the team continued their efforts, refusing to give up hope. They resorted to using dynamite, a risky but necessary measure. Finally, on Tuesday morning, after nearly 72 hours, a doctor reached Donald and confirmed the worst. He had succumbed to hypothermia and exposure. The heroic efforts of the rescue team had not been enough. The nature of the accident and the cave's unforgiving terrain had sealed Donald's fate. Recovering Donald's body was a grueling task that took another day. The tight passages and jagged rocks made it a challenging operation, but the team persisted. Donald's death left a profound impact on everyone involved. The Crooked Swamp cave system was locked for limited access, with entry restricted to experienced cavers who were members of recognized organizations. This urge of adventure reminds us about a similar incident that took place in history. Ignoring all caution, one man, driven by a thirst for discovery, ventured into an uncharted passage that turned their fun camping trip into a chilling nightmare.